Good morning. Welcome to the Board of Water and Power Commissioners meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 9th. This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. General Counsel?
Good morning. In accordance with Governor Newsom's order of March 2020, this meeting is being conducted by video conferencing, and all commissioners are participating remotely. Callers wishing to participate in public comment may do so by calling area code 213-306-3065. Again, that number is 213-306-3065. When prompted, please enter 146-964-3758. Again, that's 146-964-3758. Members of the public, you will have 2 minutes per item for a total of 5 minutes. And when you are identified, please state the item you're speaking on. And also, if you're watching on Channel 35 or computer, please be sure to turn that down so that we don't get backfeed. Thank you very much. I turn it back to you, Madam Secretary.
Commissioners, please say present for roll call. Commissioner BARAD? Please unmute yourself. Commissioner BARAD? Commissioner LEHRER?
Good morning, here.
President McCLAIN-HILL?
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY?
Present.
Vice President REYES?
Present.
And Commissioner Jill BARAD is present, 5 members present and a quorum. Opening of the board meeting by President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you, Cynthia. I have no remarks preceding this meeting, so if we could move to general public comment, that would be great.
Yes, we have one caller. Caller with the area code 323, prefix 660. Please state your name and the item that you wish to speak on.
Hi, my name is Lisa Hart. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. I think it's item number 9, if I recall correctly. It's on the equity metrics.
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to share that we were invited to participate in the discussion of the equity metrics. And it was a really great opportunity for us to learn more about the effort and also to provide feedback. So, and I wanted to emphasize that I really think I got the strong impression that our feedback, the NCSAs, as well as many other community-based organizations, feedback was taken very seriously and taken into consideration. So it was really nice to feel that we were having a meaningful and productive and constructive conversation. So I just want to thank you folks for that opportunity, and also say that as a grantee, we're working with you on electric vehicle outreach. I'm really excited about the data that you are collecting and the potential, the data that you might in the future be collecting, because I think there's a real opportunity to use those data to more effectively target our outreach efforts. And I'm also very excited. I know that there's sometimes a delay in getting folks refunds for rebates, and I'm very excited about the possibility of actually tracking those processing times as an equity metric, so that I think that can be a really powerful way to reduce barriers to some of the programs. So that's it. I just really wanted to say thank you. I'm excited to see how we can use this information going forward.
Thank you. All general public comment is now closed.
Terrific, thank you. Do we have a report or briefing by the general manager?
Yeah, good morning, commissioners. Mr. Adams is detained right now. He's attending a funeral for former councilman Tom LaBonge this morning. He'll be joining us a little bit later. So I'll be doing his report this morning. So we want to recognize February is African American Heritage Month, and during this month we're celebrating the department's African American leaders and executives for their achievements and contributions to our department and to the city of Los Angeles. We recognize our African American leaders and employees who impact department decisions and bring results that benefit our customers and stakeholders. And we also want to celebrate our diversity as we work hard to make sure that our workforce reflects the diversity of the communities that we serve. So I think this is it's a great month to celebrate. Moving on, today is also the 50th anniversary of the Sylmar earthquake that hit the San Fernando, sometimes known as the Sylmar earthquake. It was a 6.6 magnitude earthquake on the Richter scale. I know as a very young child, about 10, I had an uncle that lived in Sylmar, so we drove out to make sure they were okay. And just looking at the damage that I saw was really remarkable to see parts of buildings from the hospital collapsed on ambulances, and just seeing the severity of the damage of something that happened so sudden. It really impacted our infrastructure, the water, the power, natural gas services, as well as the transportation and communication and building systems region-wide. I think it's important that, while it really was a devastating earthquake, I think 64 people were killed during that earthquake. It really taught us a lot about our system and what we needed to do going forward. And not only us, but just the building industry, the dam safety. And those are a lot of the things we still use today. I know many of the things we put in place back from the 1971 earthquake really helped us to ride through the 1994 earthquake. And some of the lessons we learned then helped us to really restore large elements of the system relatively quickly. So we're doing a couple of things to mark this occasion and to share lessons learned. So later on today, we're participating in a program called Lifelines 2021, which is a webinar commemorating the anniversary. It's hosted by the UCLA Samueli Engineering School. Marty will be talking about lessons learned in reinforcing the water and power infrastructure. And we've also put out a media advisory to generate news stories about the anniversary. Moving on to World Hydrogen Storage. A couple of weeks ago, Marty gave a presentation to the World Hydrogen Storage Leaders Conference using the Intermountain Power Project as a case study. The World Hydrogen
Andy?
Leaders, yes.
Was that presentation similar to the ones that the deck that we've seen on it, or if it was something new? I'm wondering if I could be sent it.
I'll follow up, and
Okay.
if it's something different, we'll get it to you. But we used
Okay.
the Intermountain Power Project as the case study.
Okay.
So it's a new organization that seeks to accelerate the production and distribution of clean hydrogen. And again, we used it as a great opportunity to share our project at IPP that we're going to be converting from coal to gas, and a plant that will generate at least 30% of its fuel with green hydrogen on day one. So customer wait call times. The customer service group reports that the average call hold time during the week of January 25th to 31st was 4 minutes and 18 seconds. That's about 15% higher than typical over the last 6 weeks. A lot of that was due to the weather-related work we had, the outages from the storms that affected different communities. For the month of January, the ASA was about 3 minutes and 56 seconds, and that's the third lowest month since the start of the pandemic. So with that, I'll move on to Rich Harrisick, who wants to update to the board, and then I'll have another update on the power system right after that. So Rich.
All right, I want to notice you have a small water system cyber intrusion incident that happened yesterday. The plant's control systems were breached twice on the same day from an unnamed attacker via remote access software application. It's unclear whether or not the remote access point was internet facing or not. And the net effect was the intruder increased the dosage of sodium hydroxide, which is a lye, which is what this water system uses. It was quickly stopped by an operator. But I do want to assure the board and our public that we have measures in place to prevent this type of attack happening in our system. We have a number of really all of the best standards and best management practices in the industry, plus other measures in place. Notably, our supervisory control and data acquisition system, our SCADA system, its devices are on a dedicated network. And as a policy, we have no internet-facing devices on the network, and measures are in place that restrict the access to the network. Our system does not currently support remote operations of treatment facilities, and our control systems are designed for local control only, meaning that dosage changes can only happen at the station itself. We have other measures such as the ability to detect abnormal activity levels happening on the network as well, so we know that when there's attackers coming in and abnormalities are picked up. We keep apprised of these types of issues and best management practices by engaging in industry organizations such as Water ISAC, which is the Water Information and Sharing Center, and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CYSA. Thank you.
Rich, this is Susanna. There was a similar incident, as you probably know, in Florida. Same exact thing that happened on like a breach access and increasing this that chemical in the water system. Maybe is there a possibility that there could be a coalition of the water utilities really taking a look at that, because that's not just isolated to our case?
So what I just reported on is the Florida case?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there are other isolated, there may be other isolated cases that
I'm sorry.
a more in-depth partnership with other utilities.
Yeah, we are in a partnership. So Water ISAC is the main one for water. So we are all connected, and those are agencies that are looking at 24/7 of these types of reports, and we're notified immediately.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm confused and something that was said, Rich. The incident you mentioned was that breach occurred in Florida.
Florida.
Not our system.
Not our system.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that was abundantly clear to everybody.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, Rich, you were essentially differentiating our setup from what made Florida possible, correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Andy, is there more? You're on mute, Andy.
Oh, thank you. I just want to report, we'll be giving a presentation at the next board meeting on the 23rd, but I wanted to just give you a heads up. I'm excited. The Power System, the Joint Safety Training Institute, working with Michael D'Andrea from Human Resources. We've been working for a little over a year now on a pilot program that is a introduction to electricity course that we've completed through Trade Tech, LA Trade Tech. So we'll be ready to roll out here in the next month the start of this program, which is it's a 3-part training class that the high school students and those who recently graduated from high school will be able to take this online course through Trade Tech, which will teach them about an introductory to electricity. And that will qualify them for currently about 9 different department exams. The class will have some tutoring to help them through it. And then once they complete, they'll get a certificate that they can use with the LA Personnel Department to file for these different exams. And then we'll be looking at different exams we can add to the list. But just want to let you know we're close. Michael D'Andrea and Trade Tech and John Vanacor's group from the trust really worked hard on this. It's funded by the Power System, And I'm excited for this because this will help us reach throughout the city, all of the schools within LA City School District, and really provide an opportunity and awareness for high school students and those in the community to qualify to take our exams and get employed with the department. So again, we'll be doing a full presentation at the next.
Find your email, Commissioner? No, I'm still looking for that.
So with that, if there's no questions on that, that is the general manager's report.
Okay.
Wait, I just have are you going to give a presentation about this during the full agenda or some other time?
Yeah, it will be part of the full agenda. It's on the agenda for the next board meeting.
Okay, all right. A lot of people interested. Just want to be able to send the right information to the contacts that, that are very interested in these pathways. So thank you.
Okay.
And if I may, I just want to ask the general manager to come back with a report on the CARES program. We have successfully deployed that, as you may know, but there's interest to have an in-depth analysis of the CARES program that was completed, taking a look at how the checks were distributed, the acceptances and rejections, the outreach that was done, and the lessons learned. I think it'll be a great way to have that analysis augment our, knowledge about community engagement, communication, and best practices as, we may be going through another round of similar exercise because of the pandemic. And if the department can come back with a report on the CARES program by March 9th.
I'll just make sure that it's agendized as an item.
Thank you.
Not at the next board meeting, at the following one. All right. Is there any additional feedback or request with respect to the general manager's report? Hearing none, if we could, there are no I'm not aware of any motions to be introduced for future consideration. As a result, we will move to comments from ratepayer advocate. Dr. Pickle, do you have any comment that you'd like to make at this time, or would you like to defer comment to some other point during the meeting?
I would like to defer my comments on items in 8 and in other items if questions arise.
Terrific.
For example, in the discussion on item 24.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Then do we have, Susie, anything from neighborhood council representatives?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. Terrific. Then we will move to we'll move to our consent calendar. In advance of taking up the consent calendar, we will be removing items number 10 for discussion, items 10 through 19. Is that correct, Susie?
Items 10 through 19, yes, for consent.
Oh, for consent. All right, you're typing in real time, and what I'm seeing is it appears as if the item that's been called special is item number 20. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I would also like to call item number 23 special as well. Are there any other items that commissioners would like to have presentations or called special, or have they all been provided to the board secretary?
No, I just did it.
Nothing further from me.
Okay, terrific. Then we will, at this time, take up for consideration and approval items 10 through 19, item 21 and 22, and items 20 and item 24. Is there a motion for approval?
I move for approval.
I second. Susie, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Yes.
Oh, I'm
Commissioner
sorry.
Lehr?
Can we stop quickly?
yes.
Yeah, I'd also like a discussion on item 24. So if we would remove that from consent, that's terrific. Thank you. So, Susana, would you please make your motion again? And this would be to approve items 10 through 19 and items 21 and 22.
So move for items 10 to 19, 21, and 22 for approval.
And I will second that.
Okay, ready. Commissioner Lehr? Commissioner Lehr, please unmute yourself and for the vote.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Yes.
Commissioner BARAD? Please unmute yourself. Commissioner BARAD is having some technical difficulty. President McCLAIN-HILL?
Yes.
Vice President Reyes?
Yes.
Jill, can you raise your hand, please, for a yes vote or no vote? Yes? Yes. 5 ayes.
Okay, that's terrific. Then we will move forward with management reports, beginning with the presentation 8A, the asset inventory and management presentation. Looking forward to this one.
I'm testing. Can you hear me, Commissioner Hill?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just checking. Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you for having me here today. I'm returning to provide additional information from real estate. Next. I'm here today to focus on our assets, how we categorize our land, secondary land use, and surplus property, along with some of the challenges and solutions. Just as a general statement, I would like to state that our real estate holdings are held by Water and Power System. Technically, Joint does not own any property, and the Bishop office handles real estate holdings in Northern California above the northern end of Kern County.
So I just quickly, when you say they're held by Water and Power, I mean, there's no separate legal entity called DWP Water or DWP Power, is there?
No, but when, for example, the Staticoy yard is an example of both Water and Power owning that yard as a joint project, as a joint venture.
When you say they own it jointly, I'm just trying to understand kind of what our legal authorities are. So when you say they own it jointly, is it not? Are these properties not owned by the Department of Water and Power?
When the Department of Water and Power was created by, real estate was created by William Mulholland, it was decided at that time that one system, power or water, would own the land, not the entire department. So throughout this presentation, you'll see that water system has certain real estate holdings and power has other real estate holdings. And the customer service centers are split between power and water. We are all owned technically. The city attorney would say that all of this property is owned by the city of LA within the Department of Water and Power. And then in the Department of Water it's broken down to water property and power property.
Okay, so I just
Commissioner, I would amplify that a little bit.
So these things all mean things to me, so I just need to
Yeah,
understand them.
So let me amplify that a little bit. The under the charter, there are actually two separate funds. There is a water fund and there is a power fund, and those funds are used to purchase assets, materials, and such for the operation of those funds. So certain real assets, real property assets are purchased by those fund dollars and then would be classified a water property or a power property. But also under the charter, the board is vested with the management of all of those properties. But they do the funding comes from distinct funds.
And how is title held?
Department of Water and Power.
Okay, thank you.
City of Los Angeles buying through its Department of Water and Power.
Okay, and with respect to the distinction between water fund and power fund, is that a legal distinction that can be asserted in some context beyond that's how we categorize it?
It is, because the charter and consistent with state rate law, you can only use rates that you collect for water rates for water purposes. So that's the legal significance of it. That's why we have the two separate funds.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next, the next slide. On this slide, I just wanted to give you all an overview of where our real estate holdings are. We're in 6 states: California, Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and Oregon. Next, in Washington. Next slide. We categorize our property in 3. Fee simple, we own the property. Easements, we have rights over the property. And we also have permits with state and federal governments, because we have discovered state and federal governments don't sell their land, but they do provide us with permits for our use. The majority of our time, we identify our land through assessors, parcel numbers, referred to as APNs,
Yes.
to identify property and not addresses.
Yes.
Later in this presentation, I'll discuss
Control and M, yeah.
80% of our real estate holdings don't have an address attached to it. Instead, we identify it by APNs, which is a common use from the real estate industry and government. And I wanted to give an example of what an APN can look like and does look like.
It says mute.
Next slide, please.
After I do that.
Next slide. Thank you. So on the upper left hand, you see the Valley Generating Station. That's one facility for the Department of Water and Power and one parcel in the county of LA. On the lower right-hand side, you see Stone Canyon Reservoir, and that is a total of 177 parcels combined to make one facility for the Department of Water and Power. And as you see, the assessor's office have never combined or consolidated.
Okay, so now I have one
APN, but you could see that where there was perhaps some history on the lower left-hand side, that there may have broken up the parcels for future housing at one time, but instead the department purchased that property and used it. Next slide, please. So I would like to focus on California at this stage, and this gives you a sense of our assets. We have 2 sources of information that I pulled from. One on the left are the tax information that we receive, and on the right, information that we have in the real estate office from our GIS repository system that we refer to as REMAP. The taxes tells us we own 5,974 holdings, and REMAP tells us we have 5,235. Both of these sources do overlap, and there is duplication, but I wanted to spend some time on what these sources of information tell us about what we own. Let me spend a moment to talk about the tax records. Our taxes come from Los Angeles, Kern, San Bernardino, Imperial, Orange, and Clark County, Nevada. The remaining counties are from California.
Well, it says mute.
If you pull out attachment A with the real estate information, it is a list of facilities that we have via our tax records and identifies the system that owns them, the type of fee, and the APN. So again, you look at the second line and you see Stone Canyon, and it's 177 APNs for one facility. We have the ledger on the lower right-hand side describing the distribution, transmission, receiving stations and lines, and how we own our property. I would like to break down some of this information for you. May I have the next slide, please? In terms of fee, our taxes tells us that we own most of our fee in the County of Los Angeles. 1,528 for San Bernardino, Imperial 28, and Kern County 642. Our tax records tell us that we own 4,833 in fee. The next slide, please. Our holdings and easement are a total of 922, and the majority being in Los Angeles, San Bernardino. Next slide, please. Our government permits, for the most part, are in San Bernardino through our transmission lines and in Kern County. We have a total of 219. The next set of slides discusses the source of information that we have within the real estate office of what we own. Next slide, please. REMAPS was created in 2015 for the Los Angeles Basin. It was meant to assist the real estate office with the inquiries that they were receiving. It was not meant to be a database. The original parcel information came from 2015 for the 3 counties, Kern, San Bernardino, and Los Angeles. When I arrived, only Los Angeles has been updated. As of today, we've updated Kern and San Bernardino to the current assessor's maps. We will be adding Arizona, Utah, and Nevada's data, and we are in the process of obtaining assessor's information from Imperial, Mono, and Inyo counties. These are all new additional counties that we're adding as a source of info. At this time, I would ask you to pull out attachment B. I've broken up the information from REMAPS in both from water and power system. And similar to attachment A is the list of our facility names, the county that they reside in, the type of interest, and the APN count. Next slide, please. So I would like to discuss a little bit about this data that we have and share with you. If you see on the power system, REMAP tells me that we have 4,540 interest parcels, but on the top chart on the bar, there's 718. It states that they're not owned by DWP. These are partnerships that we have with SCAPA and IPA. REMAP tells us we have 1,346 parcels outside of Los Angeles, and 247 parcels make up our yards, buildings, and stations. And again, the majority of our parcels for the power system go into the transmission line. Power is currently looking at 21 parcels for evaluation and analysis. An example of where we need to increase and improve our data is that in doing the research, we discovered that Power has 891 easements, 2,862 fees, but REMAPS came up short with 757 parcels with no identification entered early on. So this is part of our comprehensive list that we are working to improve and to make it complete. Next slide, please. Forward.
I have a quick question.
Yes, Commissioner.
The power slide. So, for instance, it says something like actually, if you would go back, I don't know if it's on the slide or if it's on what you sent to us.
It should be the same.
Okay, then it essentially referenced that there were 21% of the parcels that uses are unaccounted for.
Oh, so it is the bar. It should be slide number 15.
Okay.
And those are 21 parcels that Power has identified that they are working for short, medium, and long term.
Okay, go ahead.
Those are 21 parcels that Power System identified that they are working to conduct the analysis to determine what those parcels are going to be for. And both Eric Montag and Helen from the water system and Eric from the power system are also here available. And Eric can speak to those 21. And he's available. He's available to answer any of those questions regarding those.
And I guess I'm less interested in understanding this by parcels, because as you demonstrated, we could have, 50 parcels making up one facility. So do you have this broken down by facility?
What I have, and let me just say, next slide. So what I have for slides 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21 are a demonstration of what our parcels translate to. So if you would like to skip 16, let's go to 17. And it tells you what our parcels translate into. 10 switching stations, 21 receiving stations, 10 distribution stations, our generating stations, solar and wind farm, the thermal plants, transmission lines, and energy storage. Next slide, please.
Now it says a parcel list. I guess is the next slide. Do you have a complete list of Power's holdings?
So this is Eric Montag. Let me just add.
When you look at your attachments, oh, I'm sorry, Eric. When you look at your attachments, there's a list of all the holdings with the facility name and the county on attachments A, B, and B.
So just to add to Adriana, real estate has a comprehensive spreadsheet. And for Power System, that spreadsheet was over 4,500 lines. And in that spreadsheet, it details out, to your question, Commissioner, the parcel number, but it also details out what that parcel number is associated with in terms of facility. And that's important for us because when we got this list, just getting a parcel didn't help us.
Right.
And so real estate has a very comprehensive list that they provided us, and that really helped us in the vetting process of what's surplus, what's not.
And I think that's what I've been trying to understand throughout the, I'm trying to understand, not from a parcel by parcel analysis, but really from a facilities versus surplus versus, things that are just out there perspective, what the department owns and how the department is managing those assets, because parcel by parcel is interesting, but of very little consequence, except from the perspective of how are we managing our assets, whether it's 5 parcels that makes up a facility or, 25 or 50 is, it's interesting, but not particularly relevant to this discussion. Among the reasons that I'm curious about these things, for instance, is that we have property that perhaps could be put to higher and better uses that may be in that surplus or abandoned category. And I'm interested in understanding that. We have council members who are very interested in understanding how we plan to use the land we own. And we have third parties that reach out to the department interested in land that we own. So that's what I've been seeking to understand, how we understand these things, and then how we go about managing these assets. And it was also, I also had interest in understanding what we lease, how current our leases are, just that sort of analysis of what's occurring. And so with that, I'll just stop talking and I'll let you continue. But some of the detail is, interesting to know, but not as useful as the bigger picture.
Yeah, on the power side, we assign facility managers for each of our facilities. All these facility managers are the directors of the divisions under Andy Kendall's group. We also have not subject matter expert, but stakeholders on the engineering side, Clean Grid LA, future planning and development. So the facility managers are responsible. And we vetted these facility parcels. We went to those facility managers. They are responsible for that. When something comes up, they get the call from real estate. Along with that, though, engineering has the long-term planning, the medium-term planning of how we're going to, reshape our system. And so we vetted through them as well. So it's a combination of the two. And then the third element of how we manage this stuff is through our respective right-of-way groups, which right-of-way happens to be under my group. And we work very closely with rec and parks, with city council districts to bring in dog parks or things that we can do that are not as restrictive to our facilities, be it height restrictions or whatever. We work very closely with these external stakeholders who are interested in using our land for secondary land use, various reasons, nurseries, you name it. And so, again, as we work through them, we work with our facility manager of that site. So it's kind of a combination of a team. Typically, real estate is the front end to any of the interaction with council districts or whoever, because they know which site they're looking for. Are they looking for water or power? And they take it from real estate. They come to our group if it's a power, and then we work with our facility manager and ensure that whatever usage that's going to be requested, it meets our standards if it's able to. I hope that answers your question.
No, that's very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And Commissioner, I wanted to speak on behalf of the water system. So,
yes.
We operate in terms of just one point of contact for the water system, and that would be.
I'm sorry, who's speaking?
My name is Helen.
Please identify yourself.
I apologize. I was put on mute by somebody. My name is Helen Olivares, and I am with the Water Operations Division, Property Management Group. And the way we manage our parcels in the water system, particularly in Metro, I'm only speaking on behalf of Metro area. There are other property managers along Aqueduct. But with regards to Metro, my group is the primary point of contact, and we work very closely with the real estate division. In addition to our stakeholders, the council district, community group, neighborhood councils, and such. But any matters that relate to the management and maintenance of our facilities, whether they be operational or non-operational in excess, is managed through the property management group, which is the section that I manage.
That's the water property management group.
That's correct, yes. For the properties in the metro area.
Okay, thank you.
I have a procedural question. You know, in my materials, for item 8A, I got a sheet that said no materials were available at time of release. And I see, did you get a PowerPoint? You requested the PowerPoint, or what? How does one, if one wants to study this before, like?
I got a copy. We received an email with a copy of the PowerPoint, I think, late yesterday. But there's this attachment, Adriana, that you keep referring to, and I don't know where that is.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have to learn to look late into the night then.
There's that, and of course, we certainly would prefer that materials be ready and provided to us well before, well before the night before, and be included in our packets. And I will say that this is a particular presentation that was ready or that's been deferred for weeks and weeks. So I'm unclear as to why we got it so late. But.
So, and it's kind of a little, it happens to be an interesting conversation for me associated with mapping all your resources. I'm missing the annual conference for ESRI, the company in Redlands that created GIS. I know that the city's been working with them, and just in terms of some of the mapping, even in terms of the equity and other things, that I'm seeing the possibility of some, if we're not already using them as advisors, to at least sort of have some of you participate in some of the online training they do. And I will send you also, this is going on now for 2 or 3 days. They're going to be doing presentations, and they do it regularly anyway. But just making sure that you can spit out the information, spit out, not a good word, but generate information quickly once you have the basic information down, which is what I think what you've been doing. So I think to get to the next level, I think even quantifying the benefits of all the trees we're planting or all the water we're saving in a coherent way that we could also start merging and creating important, delivering solid information quickly. I think it'll be helpful.
Commissioner,
anyway.
Thank you very much for your words. And let me just say, I don't know where the confusion is, because I sent the attachments on Thursday of last week so that you would all have a list of facilities that are both water and power and our taxes, and from our tax records, so you could look at what water owns, not by address, but by names of facilities and service centers. I sent some PowerPoint last week so that everyone had an opportunity to look at it. So if something
So what we will do, Adriana, is we will call this a COVID mishap, since I know that everyone is working under difficult and extreme circumstances. But that is that it's not in our board packet, so we've not seen it. And so that was part of what was difficult about following the presentation today. But I will say, but let me simply, to put your mind at ease, you've put together a very comprehensive presentation, and I appreciate that. I look forward to going through the additional information. You've given us the basis that we need to better understand what our holdings are, how they're held, what the challenges are as it relates to the real estate division, just getting its arms around everything. The additional complexity that has been illuminating here is the relationship between power and water, which was something that I did not fully appreciate in terms of there being an independent point of contact and management for the facilities or the properties bought in their names. So it sounds to me like, and we'll certainly let you proceed with this very comprehensive and illuminating presentation, but it seems to me that what you, that your division is documenting all of these holdings and not responsible for the management of all of them. I'm curious to understand the distinction between what your division is principally responsible for from a management perspective, that subset of things that you're responsible for, if there are any, and I certainly appreciate understanding the efforts that you're taking to document all of the department holdings.
Well, Commissioner, before I continue on with the presentation, just let me take a moment to say thank you. And thank you for understanding, because this is certainly not the way I wanted to come to board on the second time. I did spend a great deal of time and invested to have the attachments, to have the list so that you would have everything available. So how this COVID error occurred, it happens, I understand that, but I think what I appreciate more is your understanding, because this is not what I wanted to present and have you, I just wanted to have a much better presentation, and I worked really hard, and I appreciate that you recognize that you guys did not receive the attachments with all the lists. So let me take a deep breath, and I'll continue on.
Yes,
thank you.
We're not looking at the attachment, but the presentation's terrific. And as Mia's indicated, I think that there's great value, and we will be highly illuminated by the larger attachment. That is that is the only element that I'm missing from this presentation, but the presentation overall is quite illuminating. So please continue.
Commissioner Mia, Commissioner Mia, I would like to say that you are correct, because when I arrived in 2020 of May, mapping here in real estate is behind the times compared to water and power. We have, all of our maps are on paper. We have maps over 100 years old from William Mulholland days, and we are on paper, we are not digitized. So that is one of the things on my list that we are working to digitize our maps. So there is a great deal of work in the real estate office that we need to get to the 21st century, and we definitely send us the emails, but mapping is very interested in joining the 21st century. So on that note,
Adriana, could I add, just to answer one of the commissioner's questions? Real estate is an extremely valuable partner to us, and even more so going into the future because of the transmission line work that the power system anticipates we'll have to do. We got involved in this presentation specifically to answer the question about surplus land. And I want to be clear so that we provide that answer to the board. On the power system side, we vetted these 4,500 land parcels, and we do not have, based on the vetting process, which I could explain if asked, we do not have any surplus available in our system on the power side. I want to make sure that was clear, because that was one of the key exercise questions, key questions of this exercise. We also, to answer your management, we work very closely with Adriana, our power system right away, and I'm sure it's the same with the water system. And when I got on board with this new group, I tasked the team to work very closely with the real estate to develop a process flow. Who's responsible for what? And we have been working on that for well over a year and a half. It's mostly done. It's just we tweak it as things come up. I'm sorry.
I think that's Commissioner Lair just acknowledging and agreeing with what you're saying.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's the WebEx.
My microphone is very sensitive.
Okay. So again, to answer your question, we do have a process that we work very closely with real estate on, really defining responsibility so that each of us knows what we need to do to manage all this land.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Joe, should we be taking a technical recess right now? We're not sure what's going on. We have an alarm system going off.
It would make sense if you're going to not be able to hear anything that's going off, but it sounds, oh, nope, it's still going on. Yeah, it might be wise to take a recess for technical reasons and regroup, unless the alarm just, no, every time I say it stops, it keeps going. So yeah, this would be
for those of you in the building, figure out what's happening and be safe. And why don't we just plan to regroup in 10 minutes? Susie, just text me if we're going to need longer than that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon. We're ready to return back to the board meeting. The fire alarm has been addressed. and we are all cleared to continue our meeting. I'll take roll call. Commissioner BARAD.
Present.
President Cynthia McCLAIN-HILL.
Present.
Commissioner NEEMAN BRADY.
Present.
Commissioner Reyes.
Present.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Present.
5 present and a quorum. President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you. Adriana, if you would please resume your presentation. I would also note that it's about 11:15, and you have a number of slides. About how much additional time do you think you'll need?
Are we good with 15 minutes? I'll wrap it up quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next set of slides, 18, 19, 20, and 21, as you go through them, is a reflection of what our parcels are to water and power. Our wells, our tanks, our transmission lines, our stations, our facilities. It gives you a sense of what these APNs turn into that we talked earlier that you mentioned. So the next page, next slide, please. There's the 5 water yards. Next slide, all the customer service centers. And now the next slide, I would like to go into mapping. The real estate office has a mapping unit that prior to 10 years ago would document every lease, permit, and fee that we had. This is another gap that we have in the real estate office, as approximately 10 years ago, they were told to stop due to staffing. But the mapping unit, we work closely together and we're able to present what we have in Arizona, Utah, and Nevada. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. That was an attachment that you did not receive, but the attachment was basically a summary of the assets that we own in these 3 states and how we own them. Next slide, please. Now, when we enter Arizona, Utah, and Nevada, it's no longer APNs. We now use the term townships because the majority, if not all of our land, is for power system transmission line and a few facilities. And we cross townships because we're in rural property, rural land, unpopulated. And this just gives you a sense of what a township crossing is. And within a township, it goes more in depth into detail. Next slide. Now I just want to touch on the 3 states that we have. Arizona tells you how many permits, no fee, we own no land, and our permits. Next slide. In Arizona, we have 1 transmission known as the Navajo-McCullough. It starts on your right-hand side in the state of Arizona and travels to the state line. The next map, please. These are our holdings in Utah. There are 5 transmission lines, and again, the majority tend to be easements. The map, please. Next slide. Utah has 4 transmission lines. 4. Again, you notice there's a little camel bump with the Navajo-McCullough enters into Utah, the Intermountain Adelanto, Gander, and Mona. Now we enter the state of Nevada on the next slide. This slide also, again, what we own in Nevada, our interest. And then the next slide, please, is our transmission lines. And these 3 are just what we have in the state. Next slide, please. And I just wanted to show how one of a transmission line can be complicated as it goes to the different states and what we have to purchase for our real estate holdings to provide power to our residents in the city of LA. Next slide. Well, we showed you today, we think that we're close to 75 to 85% of our holdings. We still have gaps. We own in Oregon and Washington, and we don't have that information. Some of Nevada is spotty, and there's duplication with tax and remaps. So my goal here is to create a comprehensive list, continue working with Water and Power to identify our property. We're going to go out to RFI to look at there's any experts to assist us, vendors that do this research for the land that we don't have documentation for and we need. We're looking at real estate firms with large research arms, title companies, maybe tech companies who are interested in mapping. We're also working with John at IPA, who has gone out to RFP and working to get a master list for their real estate, and we have participated in their pilot program and working together to obtain all this information for the department, because real estate in the past have never had that, and that is one of our goals. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to talk about secondary land use, and here we are weak, Commissioner Hill. There was an attachment you will receive later with all the listings of all the licenses. We have a total of 484 licenses and 13 are current. In 1999, 33 licenses were placed on holdover. Between the time period of 2000 and 2009, additional 173 licenses were added to the list. And in the last 10 years, between 2010 and 2019, 291 additional licenses were allowed to expire. And that's where we're at with 484 licenses. There was a moratorium placed in the city of Los Angeles. Next slide, please. Next slide. There was a moratorium placed on a secondary land use in 2015. The next slide, please. The idea was to address the challenges with deposit, payment, compliance. None of these were met, and none of these were addressed. Now, in this chart, I'm giving you a sense of where our secondary land use tends to be in terms of the majority. The majority are 190 nurseries and telecom. The rest are auto, pipelines, ingress, egress to property, and the attachment that I had sent last week gives you all the individual secondary land use agreements that are not categorized into one of these groups. Next slide, please. So you may ask, what are we doing with 484 expired licenses? One, the first thing I did was establish a task force to work on this and the database, because these are our two priorities. Without a good database and a good list, we can't move forward. We need to have a solid foundation to move forward. So currently, when it comes to secondary land use, we are cleaning up our list of 484 because no one has managed these properties, licenses, or agreements. I have a large number of homes with phone numbers, basic things, phone numbers, addresses, names, contact people names. We need to go do field visits to make sure that the tenant that is on the license is the tenant that is on the property. So we have to do a lot of quality control to clean this list. Second, we're standardizing our templates, and we're meeting with risk management, the city attorney, water and power stakeholders to make sure that we all agree on the template, where we've had faults in the past and where we can improve our property management skills, and that we're including environmental affairs now, because there are new regulations that have entered the state of California and the city that, for example, vehicle parking in nurseries would have to adhere to. So we're meeting, we're developing templates, and we're cleaning up our list. Next slide, please. But to be successful, we as a real estate office must enter the 21st century, and we're just not there. So I've also have the same task force working on a database hand in hand with IT in our office. We're looking at real estate databases. We've had demonstrations from Yardi, Flare Docs, Assessment Management. IT at the Department of Water and Power will be presenting their program and how they can assist us. We're looking for technology to answer the questions for auctioning off property based on what we've seen with COVID. We want to develop an online service. So we're starting that process, and we're looking at the budget of what a database will cost us to maintain and to deliver. For us to be successful and to move those 484 and develop a plan, we are working also on developing a plan on how we're going to roll out new licenses, because 484 will not happen overnight, because it's very time consuming, and we need to have a plan of attack so we can not only assist the department in increasing our revenue, but assist the community in having things that, that will assist small businesses and community members. The next slide, please. So we're working on that. In terms of surplus property, you heard from Eric, Power System does not have surplus property at the moment. Water System provided an attachment that I sent with their surplus property with short, medium, and long-term goals. And they had 5 properties, next slide please, that had no goals attached. But I wanted to give Commissioner BARAD and everyone a sense of what surplus property may look like from the water side. So there's a residential home that was once located at 328 Museum Drive in the Montecito Heights. That is something that Water System has looked at as possible surplus. But on the right-hand side, I put the parcel map so you could see what that looks like and where it's located. Next slide, please. The Grandview tank site is also a site that had a tank at one time, and this is what it looks like in a residential neighborhood up in the hills, and that's another surplus property. Eric and Helen are here to answer questions for the commissioners regarding surplus. I moved quickly on these. If you have any questions, I know that you have a long agenda and I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me now, or we can do it one-on-one too. Oh, and the one thing I would like to say is that Commissioner Hill, you asked, what do we do? And so we in real estate prepare the right of entries, right of way, licenses, leases, agreements for external and internal customers. So you mentioned parks. We're working with the County of LA at 92nd Street to provide a park for the residents in that neighborhood. So we work with right away Eric's group to process the design, to have them approved, to prepare the lease agreements, to work on the rent. How do we assist the county? How do we work together? We go back and forth. That is one example. Another example is the gas company. They request crossings. They request to put pipes underneath our ground. We work with the gas company. When there's an external customer, they come to us. We go to power or water, whoever owns the land, with the request, and we facilitate. And then again, we draft the license, we draft the agreement, work with our city attorney, our risk management group to make it one package to process. And sometimes they come to board depending on the length of time for the contract, and sometimes they go to council and board. For example, for 92nd Street Park, our goal is to make that a 30-year lease, so the community has that park for 30 years following the rules of the charter. That will go to council, then it'll come to board for approval, and that will be another successful park that we have. Currently working with right away for 2 additional parks in the valley, a dog park. We bought Fernley, Nevada. When Power System needed a piece of property, we traveled to Nevada and we found that property, and real estate worked with Power to purchase that. We work with ADUs, encroachments, and swimming pools to give people permission to place their swimming pools in their backyard, provide encroachments, move a power line sometimes if necessary, and participate in that ADU process and encroachments. So we facilitate a great deal.
Just to sum up, you provide support to the systems in facilitating projects as they deem them appropriate to move forward.
Yes, and that is a very concise sentence. And I just think of all the things that we do, and I have so many wonderful people.
Adriana, I'm losing control of this meeting, so I just have to assert a little bit now so that we can move forward.
Not a
just
problem.
Quickly, thank you. This has, again, been a really good overview and I think delineation of responsibilities and relationships, roles and relationships within the department. And it's been, frankly, very helpful for me and will certainly form the basis of questions and presentations moving forward. Are there any questions or comments from other board members? I can't see everyone, but hearing nothing and seeing none, I appreciate the presentation, and we will move to item 8B.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is Ann Santilli from Financial Services, and I have John Chen from Corporate Performance with me. And we just wanted to give an update on the Equity Metrics Data Initiative. Commissioner Reyes, did you want to open with any comments since this was in response to your motion?
Sure. Just briefly, this is a progress report on the board resolution that was approved in October 2020, instructing the department to revisit the equity metrics and have and acknowledge that there is room for the Equity Metrics Data Initiative to expand from its 4 categories and 15 metrics to include more meaningful metrics, really on specifically related on low income and efficiency rebate programs. So the overall goal is to review the existing metrics, and the end goal is to ensure that this DWP program, that DWP provides various programs for all income levels, and by adding the metrics and really looking at meaningful metrics, adding a socioeconomic lens to the programs and incentives that DWP develops, we can be very intentional about distributing our resources in an equitable way. So we did hold 2 workshops to solicit feedback from external stakeholders before management can review and develop the next set of recommendations that will then be analyzed by the ratepayer advocate, Mr. Fred Pickle, and then reviewed by the board before formal approval. And I know just doing these workshops with our external stakeholders, how valuable their feedback is. Thank you for their participation. We have about 31 of our community-based organizations attend the 2 workshops. And also I know how committed the department is, from the inception of the EMDI to continue to fine-tune the metrics and later add more to help ensure that equitable service delivery and access to its programs and commitment and services. So with that, knowing that we are short on time, I want to turn it over to Ann and John, and thank you, Ann and John, for your leadership on the Equity Metrics Data Initiative.
Thank you, Commissioner. Next slide. Just to go over some background, our services are currently distributed and offered equally to all customers, but each customer has different needs and different resources. Equity is offering services and programs that consider the customer needs and resources so they can access our services. So looking at the diagram, all of the apples on the tree are at the same height, similar to the idea that all of our services are offered equally. However, not everyone can access them equally because of their different needs or resources. Equity is acknowledging the differences and working with our customers so that as you move to the right, they can all reach our programs equally. Next slide. Equity Metrics Data Initiative began collecting data in fiscal year 16-17. And as Commissioner Reyes mentioned, in October of 2020, there was a motion to reach out to internal and external stakeholders with the idea to review and expand the current metrics with specific strategies for baseline, short-term, mid-term, and long-term performance goals. Next slide. Currently, there are 4 equity metric categories: our water and power infrastructure investments, our customer incentive programs, procurement, and employment. Next slide. In January, with Commissioner Reyes' assistance, we held 2 workshops. Over 30 organizations were invited to attend, and 21 did attend. We held 2 Zoom meetings, one on January 15th and the second one on January 22nd. Participants were asked to review the current equity metrics and to think about that in advance of the meetings. And some of the entities that were able to join us was the Los Angeles Brotherhood Crusade, the Pacific Asian Consortium for Employment, Pecoy and Beautiful, Sierra Club, Trust South LA, the Salvadorian American Leadership and Education Fund, the Neighborhood Council of Sustainability Alliance, the NRDC, and we also had members from the Mayor's staff, the Office of Public Accountability, and then also very many program managers were able to work with us as well. And now I will turn it over to John so he can show you some of the platforms that we walk through with the meeting attendees.
Next chart. Good morning, Commissioners. One of the main objectives of our equity metrics is to provide transparency on the performance of our services and programs. We recently shared a demo with our stakeholders, a new interactive maps platform for the existing 15 equity metrics. We received very valuable feedbacks from the stakeholders. Included here are the 3 examples of charts and graphs that were presented during the outreach meeting. This is a chart for our solar rooftop program. To the left of this chart, it shows the number of applicants between 2017 to 2020. And in the middle is the number of actual participants of the program. So obviously, what we are trying to do here is to show there's a gap of the number of applicants versus participants. Further analysis will be done on why some of those applicants ultimately did not receive rebates for this program. And this is just one example of the chart that we're able to show to the public. To the right, every zip code has its own data information. One of the comments, which is excellent comment we received from the stakeholder, is hey, how about showing the end-to-end application timeline for programs such as this, so that we can see what's the average response time from applying the rebates for the program to actually receiving it. Next page. This is a graph of our low-income customers, and we are providing a lot of rebates for a number of customers that qualify as low-income customers. We not only can show the different by zip code the number of participants of the program, but we also want to track how they pay their bill. Is the bill in the rear for each of the zip code, so that we can do further analysis and devise further assistance for those programs. And one of the comments, again, great comments from the stakeholder is how about generating some information on the actual total dollar amount that's provided to those customers by zip code? And because sometimes we don't get the whole picture, whether it's a $5 rebate or system program or versus $500. So we want to know, are they getting the fair share of our programs and services? Next page. This is a graph of our water conservation device program. This illustrates the delivery channel of the program. The graph shows how many customers actually receive the devices from mail, via mail, or they come directly to the pickup from our branch offices for those devices. It also
what are the devices?
Some of the, for example, the shower head.
Okay.
Device, yeah. And then, so we also break.
I have a question. Excuse me.
Yes. Yes.
Are any of these graphs in our presentation? I mean, I'm trying to follow. It's very interesting, but I have this 100 pages and for this item, and I don't see some of this material.
I think it also provided by email.
Oh, I see.
The board packet.
It's the email factor. Okay.
Yeah. What I think you're looking at, Commissioner Lair, is the information report. That is a biannual report, which is different from this effort that we're undertaking.
Oh, I see.
So
okay. Okay. Thank you.
So in addition to showing the delivery channel and the type of customer receiving those services, we will be diligently evaluating the feedbacks from the stakeholders so that we can further making improvements on the graph and charts that present more in-depth analysis on programs to the public. For example, we'll be more closely looking at how do we cross-market our programs and services to our customers. How do we keep in mind of the digital divide? Some of our customers doesn't have internet access. So how do we reach them? We have a lot of good marketing materials, but maybe we can do more in different type of languages. Also, we'd like to show some of the results of partnering with other agencies and community business organizations to help reach our customers to those local areas. So we'll be doing a lot of work, getting more work done on the feedbacks. Thank you. Anne?
Next slide. In order to facilitate the stakeholder feedback, we did provide them with 2 open-ended questions that we wanted their input on. At the first stakeholder meeting, we asked them, do our current programs and metrics resonate with you? Are these the right metrics? And what changes could be added to make the equity metrics more meaningful in assessing LADWP's programs that are provided to all customers and residents of Los Angeles in a fair and equitable manner? And at the second workshop, we asked them, what are the challenges and opportunities for effective community engagement? What metrics can be applied to measure communications and community engagement related to the equity metrics? Next slide. Once we did the introductions and welcome the stakeholders, we broke them out into working groups, and we used a tool called Miro boards that allowed us to display comments and get feedback. Each breakout session had 1 to 2 facilitators that took notes and displayed them. And each breakout session also had a spokesperson, one of the community members, that would share the comments from the group with the other ones once we regrouped from our breakout sections. Next slide. And this is a sample of what the community-based organizations were working with. This is the Miro board that we were working with. And as the facilitator asked questions and received comments, they put them on these Post-it notes so that everybody could see it. And it was also a nice way for us to collect the information so we have a full record of what was discussed and what were some of the suggestions from the groups. Next slide. So in the area of stakeholder recommendations for area focus, the stakeholder input was summarized into the following major categories: improve our communications, enhance the metrics, the tracking and the reporting, evaluate the current 15 metrics in 4 categories for possible modifications. And they also talked about the formation of a equity metrics working group. Next slide. And on the communications and engagement, establish the ongoing equity metrics working group, and that we wanted to be consistent of the community stakeholders as well as the LADWP program managers and corporate performance. And as John mentioned, improve our tracking and look at the purpose of the metric, the impacts on the community, and be mindful of the digital divide. They talked about having different languages, having different materials, maybe even going back to billboards and putting some some things that were put up there where people may just walk in instead of looking at their digital devices. And also work with the community-based organizations because they know what languages are mostly spoken in their communities, and that can help us as well. Next slide. They are aware of the information that we capture a narrative background. This is one of the 15, the criteria, some of the issues, and our outreach strategy. They actually said that they liked the level of detail that we currently capture, and that was a point that they thought was well received. Next slide. So stakeholder recommendations to enhance it is the addition of a racial equity category for our EDMI initiative, improve the purpose and impact description of each metric, report on that end-to-end application processing time. Some of the stakeholders shared that this is a barrier because if it takes us too long to reimburse customers for different rebate programs that they have to put money out on, this can be a barrier for them to participating in them. Report on the backlog at various stages of the application process. And then look at target levels for penetration for each one, look at zip code levels, and then the cross-market programs. If a customer identifies for participating in one program, it would be helpful to them if we would look ahead and see what other ones they could possibly utilize to help them with their bills or other applications that they're applying for. Next slide. So our next steps is to evaluate and the recommendations and the additions or deletions to the equity metrics. We're looking to work with this within 90 days, evaluate the feasibility of adding new metrics, determine the availability of data and the sources of program managers, seek input from OPA and stakeholders as well. So we'll be working with them more to hear more information and what we plan to move forward with, and then bring back to the board the formal recommendations after talking to the stakeholders. So this is our progress report, and this is the end of our presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board?
I am wondering about if any of these meetings were held in another language.
They were actually, no, they were not.
Okay.
But that's a
well,
good point.
that's you know, surprising. And just in terms of equity and.
Well, I think, Commissioner, they were dealing with formalized stakeholder groups so that there were no language barriers with respect to their participation. The leadership of most of those groups do speak English. So
yeah.
this
so just so long that it becomes clear to them that their responsibility to communicate back or any of the materials that get created or barriers, like the Salvadorian, Salif, for example, who I'm very familiar with, the Salvadorian leadership group, and a couple others that were mentioned, just language.
Salif was there, and they did, they're one of those who recommended that materials
yes.
that we provide to our customers be in different languages.
Yes, and also the way we could talk a little bit more about that, and what are the pathways to communicate, because not for everybody is church, the churches and schools the go-to place unnecessarily. A lot of people are very savvy online and do all other things, but for a lot of these groups, there's just a different pathway for communication.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, and it's sort of related, but sort of not, and that's related to technology. It's come to, during COVID, it's come to my attention through some of the groups that I work with, that they don't have the bandwidth for nobody's complained about not getting water and power, but they do complain that they can't get basically the bandwidth for devices, for computer. And I'm wondering, do we ever collaborate? I know on my street there were, when technology went in, it went in on its own, and they fixed some water pipes, and then they did the electricity, and it's all separate. Do we ever, sort of collaborate or coordinate with, some of the larger companies that are constantly using our right-of-ways, just to make it also more equitable in terms of who gets. A lot of the young people in schools right now are having a really hard time. So for the future, just something to think about.
Any other questions or comments? All right, if none, I have a couple. So I will simply note that first, this has been a really significant and important process. I see that we are coming back now 90 days from now. As I recall, this was due back end of January in terms of recommendations to the board. And I just want to note that because we actually did pass a resolution with a time back for those recommendations. If the request is to extend out for another 90 days, I'm sure, I mean, it is what it is and we can live with that. I'm particularly interested in because, as we discussed at the time the resolution was passed, the first step goal here was to evaluate the existing metrics to determine, to make sure that they were relevant, to determine if there were any additional metrics that we should be keeping, and to make sure that we are measuring things that meaningfully relate to equity. My concern being that documents and documentation can become so comprehensive and so complex that it loses all relevance to the point or to the goals that you're trying to achieve. So I'll be looking very carefully at the relationship between what we're measuring and how those measurements or how that data supports achieving particular goals. It also looks like we had a number of, a lot of input around programmatic, specific programmatic undertakings. And I'll be interested in seeing that as separate items. But I'm, particularly supportive of and grateful to Commissioner Reyes for taking this on, for making it as comprehensive and transparent as it is, and for soliciting what appears to be incredibly useful information from stakeholders who also have an interest in this process. I do want to say a little bit about the working group, and my only question or concern around another working group is the department does a lot of these, and I will be interested in both. A lot of the feedback that I've gotten from CBOs is that there's a lot of talking, and we sort of begin to channel a lot of community kind of, the community outreach and the community engagement. Again, it's sort of very surface. It's a thing we do, but it doesn't really have a lot to do with how we operate or the business of the department. So I will be curious about the purpose, the goal, the duration of a formal working group that comes out of this process, and be interested in understanding how that advances our goals beyond simple engagement. So that's kind of my feedback. It was really well put together, really important work to do, and has been done at an exceptional level, both by the staff and certainly with the leadership of Commissioner Reyes. Any other feedback?
I agree, and I appreciate the thoroughness. And I mean, if this process works, then to your point of not reinventing the wheel, to try to find ways to use the same process in other areas of evaluation that we have to do. It sounds like it was very productive. And look forward to seeing where we end up.
Terrific. If we could have, if we could move to 8C.
I think it's still morning for 2 more minutes. Good morning again, commissioners. Myself and David Jaco will be presenting here. This will be a brief presentation on what we're doing to staff with the additional home energy improvement program. to staff that program up, and then David will be talking about a new comprehensive, affordable, multifamily retrofit program. So, next slide. So basically what we're looking at is augmenting the additional HYPE program. This will include hiring an additional 62 civil service employees to administer and do the program. We are starting the hiring process for that now. The positions have been approved. The requests to hire are being submitted to me this week. We'll get them signed, and then we'll start sorting the list here in the next week or so to hire the civil service employees that we need to hire in order to get them trained. And then we just currently had hired a class of utility pre-craft trainees. So they're in their initial process. So we've identified May of 2021, and we'll be hiring an additional number of 14 UPCTs.
Sorry, Commissioner Lair, could you mute your mic?
Yes, I was looking for the notes on the previous person.
There you go.
There you go. Oh.
So we'll be hiring an additional group of UPCTs in May in order to staff this program up for the trainees. In this fiscal year, the budget for this will be an additional $15 million for labor, and then plus materials and fleet. And then we'll be looking in future years to increase this program even farther. Next slide. So with the new UPCTs, we'll be bringing them in. We'll be bringing them in May, and it takes them about 2 to 4 weeks of onboarding where we talk about our company policies. We go through our safety programs with them to make sure that they're ready to go. And then through Trade Tech, they get weatherization training. So it's about 5 weeks or so from additional date from the initial hire date that they're ready to start working, and then we go through the on-the-job training for the tools and equipment, and then they will be part of the our UPCT program, where we'll continue to rotate additional UPCTs through the program every 6 months or so. So we're excited. We're ready to start. We will again, they're supplying the hiring request this week, and we'll get everybody ongoing. So we will be pretty close to hitting the ground running. I mean, I am hoping by July we'll be able to start getting people back into people's homes to start this important work, not only for us but for our customers. So I'm kind of targeting that date, optimistically, but we'll play that by ear. With this, I want to get people back to our solar rooftops programs where we're installing solar under that program. So optimistically, I'm trying to target about July 1st to get back into and actually doing the work. In the meantime, we will be training and getting people ready so that when we're able to do it day one, we're ready to be in people's houses and going. So with that, I'll pass it on to David.
Great, thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 12:02. So I'm going to take it from there. This expansion of HYPE is Home Energy Improvement Program is very exciting. Very excited to see that very successful program grow. It's going to expand in terms of its reach, by a significant amount of money, $15 million, and all the incremental staff. It's not going to grow in scope. It's going to do the same measures that it does. It's just going to be a bigger program. The program that will pick up the additional scope, can I get to the next slide, please, is this one. So there's a little bit of a branding change here. I want to let everybody know. We used to call this one LIWIP, Low Income Weatherization Program. A lot of problems with that name. Specifically, it's not a weatherization program. HYPE is a weatherization program. This is a much more comprehensive, central system-based, calculated rebate program as opposed to a direct install program. This is the working title, but it seems to, it seems to be adequate for the time being. Comprehensive Affordable Multifamily Retrofits, or CAMR for short. But it's important to stress, though, that this is what the stakeholders all along that have been advocating for us to do a comprehensive optimization, multi-channel, multifaceted, deep retrofit electrification and solar program for low-income multifamily. This is that program. So, and it's built on the statewide LEHRER framework that everybody, that they're familiar with, and they were advocating for LADWP to bring into Los Angeles. The reason for the distinction, besides the fact that the state's program name it's confusing, especially since HYPE is our weatherization program. But on top of that, the stakeholder process that we've gone through recently, actually it's been a multifaceted, multi-channel stakeholder process, including our union, the stakeholders who advocated for this expansion into low-income multifamily in the first place, and then also the workshops, the equity metrics workshops that SUSANA put on in January, has given us a lot of great insight as to how we want to make this program our own, and not just boilerplate the state's program into LA. Start with that, great starting point, but then add to it. And I'll go through what those enhancements are that we've developed out of the various stakeholder processes. But just at a high level, it's again, it's starts with LEHRER, comprehensive customized renovation retrofit program specifically for low-income properties. It's based on the state's low-income weatherization program, but we've customized and enhanced it specifically for LA. It is a rebate program. This is an important distinction from HYPE. HYPE is a direct install program where we, with DWP forces, come into the customer's home and make all the upgrades, parts and labor are free. This is a rebate program. It doesn't operate as a direct install program. The customer hires their own contractors to do the work, with heavy involvement from our planned program administrator, which is the Association for Energy Affordability, AEA. So we're preparing a board package with the contract with AEA, piggybacking on the state's competitive solicitation process through which they hired AEA to do the same type of work. But we will be paying, so they'll be, and I can take you through some of their scope, but basically, they'll be helping the customers put these projects together, identify the measures, take a run at calculating the greenhouse gas emissions reductions and the energy savings and the bill savings, help the customers put together a bid package for the contractors, but ultimately the customer hires the contractor and then receives a rebate that AEA will calculate and DWP will verify, and we will be paying out those rebates through our accounts payable group. And so that's an important, that's one of the main differences between HYPE and CAMR. We're looking at that AEA contract coming to board March 23rd. We cleared a key deadline with our purchasing group, supply chain services, last week to hopefully set that up. And barring any unforeseen issues between now and there, March 23rd is when we'll be able to bring that to board. But now what I really wanted to highlight are the ways that we've enhanced the standard, the basic LEHRER program offered by the state and made it into an LA-specific enhanced program we're calling CAMR. First off, prevailing wages. We're requiring that the customer's contractors, for any work they're doing under the scope of CAMR, that they're getting an incentive from us, those need to be, they need to be paying prevailing wage. And so one thing that AEA will be tasked with is enforcing that, helping the contractors set up certified payrolls, and then receiving and reviewing those, certifying those, so we can be sure that those projects are paying prevailing wage. Accordingly, we raise the incentive levels to help, to offset those additional costs for the customer. So we anticipate a customer participating in our program in LA, paying prevailing wage to their contractors, will get sufficiently additional incentive to make it cost neutral if they had other properties not in LA that weren't requiring prevailing wage. So that was a really key function of the program. Another one is that we have the existing building energy energy and water efficiency, EBEWI, sorry, the benchmarking requirements. I'll make it simple. So those requirements, the benchmarking requirements under EBEWI, are now getting into this area where they also apply to multifamily. And low-income multifamily in particular probably has some of the highest barriers to compliance with the standard. And so we saw the opportunity for CAMR, enhanced LADWP, to assist with that as well. And we have the LA Better Buildings Challenge already on board. This board approved the Sustento contract to continue that last September. And one of the things we envisioned at the time, and we found that there's great stakeholder interest in, is a higher level of EBEWI compliance support for multifamily, and specifically affordable or low-income multifamily. So that will be a facet of our program. A couple more that I want to highlight. We plan to coordinate closely with the HYPE multifamily program. So customers have the choice to receive the free measures from HYPE that they otherwise would have paid for in the rebate program, CAMR, but still have the more comprehensive energy efficiency, building electrification, solar, PV, central system measures that are in CAMR. It's going to be a little bit of a coordination challenge, but it's essential. The way I like to explain this one is, you go to one restaurant, and say one restaurant is giving away veggies and salad, but they don't have steak. And then you go to another restaurant and they have steak, but they also want to sell you the veggies and salad. So you'd say, well, can I get the free veggies and salad from this one, and then just go over here and buy the steak? That's the concept. That's what we want to enable. So if we're doing it for free already in HYPE, and HYPE has the bandwidth and it's ramped up and we're back in customer homes, let's do the easy stuff, the HYPE measures, the weatherization measures. Let's do that for free. And then the customer's only paying for, the deeper central system retrofits, the building electrification, solar measures that are incentivized or rebated through CAMR. It won't start out that way because HYPE isn't ramped up yet. It's not back in homes yet. But as soon as it is, we foresee customers being desirous of having the choice. Now, in some cases, they may elect not to take the free stuff from HYPE. They may decide that the scheduling's too complicated. We'll just do it all through CAMR. But we want to give the customers a choice. And then similarly, we're planning future coordination with the VNEM pilot, the virtual net energy metering pilot. Those conversations are already going on with Jason Rondo's group. It's a pilot at this point. I think it's only about 5 or 6 projects, but if it comes to scale, we see a great opportunity to merge that offering into CAMR as well. And finally, this is a little one, but it's kind of an example of how we're starting at the outset of this, trying to reduce burdens on participation and streamline the program. The state LEHRER program, low income weatherization program, has always required a good faith down payment from customers. It gets to initiate the idea that they have some skin in the game from day one. We're eliminating that. We don't really see the purpose for that. It sets up a situation where we have to hold on to money. It's an administrative burden. It's an upfront issue for the customer. It's not a ton of money, $1,000, $2,000, but we just don't see the purpose. We figure if the customer is sufficiently engaged to sit down with us and take us through their facility and spend a few hours going through the program and getting into the measures, that they're interested. To that end, we actually have a fairly robust pipeline of interested properties. I believe there's about $400,000 worth of projects that are pretty much 100% certain, that are just waiting. The reservations have already kind of been booked and they're waiting for this program to be in place. After that, there's about $7.5 million worth of projects that are pretty certain to move forward once this program's in place. So we'll be starting when we hopefully get this approved March 23rd. We'll be starting from a position of strength to hit the ground running. And because these are customers' own contractors, our own COVID limitations right now, where we're not sending in our folks or our directly contracted vendors, does not apply. If they want to start tomorrow and hire vendor contractors between them and their contractor on their COVID protocols and everything. So that's where we still see energy efficiency activity occurring, even though our direct install programs have been on hold due to COVID. So that's the update. You know, a lot's happening fast. We did have to work with the local 18 to resolve some issues that Andy just presented, and with that, we were able to really get this thing, you know, to the state it's at now. And then special shout out to Vice President Reyes and SUSANA for the recent workshops that really got us some good input on how to make this program better for Los Angeles. Thank you.
Thank you both. Before I say anything, are there any commission comments?
No, I really appreciate knowing about the program and just know how much the multifamily retrofits will bring and how much they will benefit from the program. So very thoughtful, and I appreciate it. I get asked by people who they can contact. Effie Turble Sanders, who's now a vice something at USC in a very interesting program, has heard about some of the programs. So I didn't know who to connect her with because she would like to engage and understand them better because they're reaching out to their community at large.
Right. Go ahead and connect her to me if you don't mind, and I'll either I'll give her what she needs, or I'll get her to somebody who.
Okay.
You know what
and you know her, right?
What's her name?
President, Commissioner. Yeah. What?
Yes, know her well.
Okay. All right.
I know her as well.
Okay. So
me too. Happy to help her in any way.
Commissioner Reyes, did you have any comments?
I just want to, big shout out to the team. It's been a long time coming. And thank you, President McCLAIN-HILL, also for your involvement, for helping, kind of fast track the effort, because this has been almost a year now that we've been, struggling to figure out how the LADWP part and the HYPE part can be segmented, but at the same time, be part of a whole suite of programs that LADWP can offer, and specifically because of the $100 million allocation that is really for multifamily properties where they are old or are older stock and are not energy efficient, and also causing a lot of the emissions, right? If we're looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions and connecting the health of the community with that of an environmental effort. So CAMR and HYPE, thank you. That will be a huge effort on our part to do that. The only thing that I'm really curious about and for the staff to take a look at is that is the low income verification determination approach, so that we can have a more streamlined process for that. I know there's some. I think with HYPE you have like a backlog, so we're gonna be waiting for that until we have enough staff. But for the CAMR, also, David, if you can make sure that with AEA, the approach on the rebate program, that those verification, the processes, the forms are going to be interactive, that we can track them because of the equity metrics, right? And also on the reporting procedures. But thank you so much for everything.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other commission comments? Hearing none, I just want to also, to indicate my support of these programs and my excitement about this coming together finally. I want to acknowledge Commissioner Reyes' role in really, pushing and raising these as issues, as things that we, if we just focus and get moving, we can make considerable impact. I also want to say this. these efforts are not just efforts supported by this department. Local 18 has come up over the course of several presentations as alternatively a barrier or a stakeholder or whatever. It is my understanding, forget that, I know that Local 18, that our labor union is equally supportive of these programs. And it is incumbent upon all of us, our partners in labor, the CBO community, who have been incredible advocates for this work, and this department to collaborate in an effective and impactful way. When we talk about equity and we talk about moving toward a greener, cleaner Los Angeles, we sometimes get caught up from my perspective in the kind of the sexy big stuff, but it's the stuff that's right on the ground that has the potential to impact people where they live, both in terms of their lived environment, but also in terms of work. And we don't want to lose sight of our ability to leverage all of the things that this department does and can do in a way that it builds neighborhoods, it builds communities, and to be urgent about it. We talk about the pandemic impacts, and from my perspective, the pandemic causes us, or at least it motivates me, to be urgent about the deployment of this kind of work that benefits the department, that benefits the individual, and that benefits communities. So moving forward, what I'm going to be looking for is how these efforts are coordinated, how they stay on track, how we meet aggressive metrics and timetables for deployment. And that really requires us to stay on it, not get sidetracked, and not accept roadblocks or misunderstandings or the kinds of things that create delay. Andy, I have a quick question for you. Your presentation referenced 62 new employees and 15 million, you said, additional dollars. So is that over and above what was previously targeted toward HYPE, or is the $15 million the total target?
That's above the original 10 that was budgeted. So it's a $15 million current increase in the program. And I agree with you on everything you said. One of the reasons my drop dead date for getting this going is July 1st, because I think, as I've told you, I'm going to be retiring August 1st, and I want to make sure this is on track and moving while I still have influence. So that's if I still have influence in the next couple months. But
you break my heart every time you say that you're retiring. So you're going to have to stop referencing that. Although I do know the person standing behind you, and I know that he's terrific. So I'm looking forward to working with him as well. And I wanted to acknowledge your group and the work that they've done to really jumpstart this. And again, Commissioner Reyes, you, as in many other efforts, are the spark that lights the match. And so I appreciate that. If we have nothing more on this, Marty, I see that you've joined the meeting. So I thought I saw Marty. Did Marty step in, or is he not around yet?
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, I was going to say, I thought I saw you on screen, but again, I don't see everybody, so I might have been wrong. So welcome. And I didn't know if you had anything to add to this before we move on to the items, to item 9.
No, I just, I want to echo exactly what you said, is that, we have every reason in the world to have a sense of urgency about this. And so I'll be glad when we get the revised contract that's basically, as David said, kind of hone the work down to something that's much more narrow and focused to assist our customers. And as soon as we're able to get back in people's homes, we're going to start really making a difference. And I think the team's done a great job of pulling together what was clearly originally a couple different directions from previous boards over the years during budget and other conversations and really come up with two parallel programs that complement each other very well. And I think we'll make the most of it. So looking forward to a lot of success here.
Okay, appreciate it and appreciate you all. Thank you, Nancy, for your engagement on this as well. If we could move to filed items, the monthly reports. Are there any comments or questions relative to those reports? Hearing none. We'll move to the board items that were called special. I think that is beginning with item 20.
Yes, that's a water item. I'll start off before I introduce staff. The Silver Lake Reservoir Complex, including both the Silver Lake Reservoir and Ivanhoe Reservoir, is obviously the namesake for the Silver Lake community. And in that community, there's long been a desire to access the reservoir, but obviously because it was a drinking water reservoir, it was restricted to open access by the public. More recently, the reservoir was taken out of service when it became under compliance with the surface water treatment rule, water quality regulations. So knowing of this long desire and not now being limited to keep the public out from the reservoir property, the DWP has stated that it will open the reservoir once there is a plan and funds to operate the property as a publicly acceptable and accessible, facility. And so, though the DWP will not fund or operate any such open access in the future, it did agree to fund a master planning process so the community could imagine what could be in the future. So your board back in April of 2018 entered into agreement with the Bureau of Engineering for them to lead the planning effort and the community engagement process to develop the what is now known as the Silver Lake and Ivanhoe Reservoirs Master Plan. That planning process has concluded and an EIR now needs to be produced. Now there are funds remaining in that agreement with Bureau of Engineering, and so the amendment that is before you is to merely allow the remaining funds to be used for the preparation of an environmental impact report, as that specific task was not initially identified in the agreement. So again, the master plan is for the community and interested stakeholders, and if it ever does go forward, it will be executed and funded by the city. So this is the city's plan. I have today to present just a few slides here. Christine Trong, who's a project engineer in Water Engineering Technical Services, and Deborah Weintraub, who is the Chief Deputy City Engineer with the Bureau of Engineering. So I'm going to turn it over to Christine at this point.
Can I ask one? I'm sorry, before you jump into this, Rich, just to clarify something you said. So the plan is developed by BOE and will ultimately be funded through the city, and we've obviously contributed some funds towards this effort. But there are lands, this is obviously still LADWP land, and some parts of it will be ceded for park use. Will those lands, or maybe the answer is not even known, but will the land be given to the city for management, or will there be an actual transfer of that land? And then how much say does LADWP have in what is retained for?
Sure. So the intent is for DWP to continue to own those lands. Prior to the beginning of the planning of this master planning process, we kept back to ourselves those portions of the reservoir complex that we knew that we would need in perpetuity for operation. It still is an operational reservoir, although the body of water is not for drinking. So we have protected ourselves in terms of what we still need for ourselves, but still allowing people to access our property. So there's a few other examples like that we have in the city. Actually, around Silver Lake, there is a meadow park where DWP still owns the land, but it was constructed and operated by different departments within the city. So we don't have an intention of giving the land to the city. We may lease or license portions of it.
Okay, so at this point, though, there's nothing for LADWP to determine, you know, in order to preserve the land for its working needs.
No, you know, we, as I mentioned to you, we are more than just an interested stakeholder in this. So obviously, as the property owner, we want to protect our asset there, but still at the same time find that balance of how we can open up, which is, you know, obviously a jewel in the community in terms of property.
Okay, thank you.
Christine.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. Can you guys hear and see me okay?
Speak up just a little louder.
Sure. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you guys for your interest in this project. As Rich mentioned, my name is Christine Trong, and I will be presenting on the amendment to the Memorandum of Agreement for the updated Silver Lake and Ivanhoe reservoirs. And as Rich mentioned, we also have Deputy City Engineer Deborah Weintraub with us today. Deborah, BOE, and their principal consultant, Hargrave Jones Associates, are the project lead for the master plan, have been the primary force behind this development, and are the reason we're before the board today with this amendment request. So I'll just give some, so before, what you see before you is different concepts that's been developed through the master plan process. Since the project inception in 2018, the project team has been soliciting feedback and input from the community, the council districts, and various other city departments. Based on what they heard, the project team formulated the master plan to highlight, enhance, and include the values that the community wanted most. So what you see on your screen is a map of the site. Ivanhoe is that smaller squarish reservoir water body to the north, and Silver Lake is the larger water body to the south. Both reservoirs were included in this master plan because they are connected historically and geographically. By doing this, the master plan study area is much more comprehensive and encompasses the entire site. The primary goals that BOE and Hargrave targeted were to balance nature and human activities through wildlife improvements and settle passive recreation and education. The proposed concepts include an outdoor classroom, an education center, improving the existing dog park and rec center to the south. There are also plans for adding wetland habitats, floating islands, walking paths, feeding terraces that are going to be located throughout the site. So as I stated previously, the master plan's aim was to enhance the wildlife and include passive activities while preserving these serene views that the reservoirs have. And again, their themes and values that the community wanted to exemplify. Next slide. And we knew this because the high level of engagement that BOE and Hargraves has had throughout the entire process. During the past 2 years, the project team organized 5 different community workshops to gather input from the community that garnered 200 to 600 attendees at each event, and with over 8,000 questionnaire responses. The team even made efforts to continue this community engagement through during COVID, with the last community workshop being a virtual event that resulted in approximately 1,500 video views and over 900 questionnaire responses. Those videos are still available to be seen on BOE's project page, and they kind of summarize the entire design process as well as the different aspects of the master plan itself. So the project team has kept the public engaged and informed every step of the way and would like to continue to do so moving forward. So that brings us to this board item and BOE's current request to amend the agreement. Next slide. The original agreement was for BOE to develop a master plan in coordination with the community in 3 years using up to $2.9 million. BOE was able to complete the task with $1.2 million left over. The proposed amendment before you today would extend the contract to September 2023 and expand the scope so BOE can obtain environmental clearance through an EIR. BOE has remaining funds, that 1.2 I mentioned earlier, and they would not require any additional funds from DWP. So in addition to this amendment, we also have 2 exhibits that we want to just go over really quickly. So next slide. We are updating 2 exhibits. Exhibit A, what you see for you, is a map of the study area and the allocation of land for public use, which is in the green, DWP use, which is in red, and shared use in orange. We also have that yellow portion that Rich had mentioned earlier, where we currently lease to Rec and Parks, and that's up in the north, that little corner, and then the meadows, and then in the south, you have the rec center area. And then in blue, which is kind of small, but it's there, It's the recent developments the DWP had done to provide closer access to the water to the community, and they're the walkways that the community currently can, walk on and access or get closer to the water itself. So that is being updated because previously the original exhibit wasn't as clearly delineated, and also there were certain areas that kind of cut into the master plan ideal area. It cut into a knoll, this elevated area, and we wanted to be able to let the project team comprehensively develop the master plan. So we ended up having to shift some of it around. But again, what you see before you is what we plan on proceeding in the future. And then the next slide, we have Exhibit B, which is an updated cost and schedule to reflect the funds to date that have been used by BOE and the proposed usage of the funds. So the first three columns are the estimated costs that were shown in the original MOA, and the following, the last 3 to 4 columns are the actual costs from the last 3 years that BOE has been developing the project. And this will be Exhibit B in the amendment, and it goes on to the next page, the next slide.
Wait. Sorry, that was pretty quick there. Go back there.
Sorry. Yeah. Can we go back one slide? Yeah.
Yeah. And just on the draft master plan, how much is left on that? Because you said it's not quite complete. So how much is left to?
Oh, the master plan has been finalized. It's just
okay.
It's scheduled to be presented to the Board of Public Works as well as City Council. That's the last bit of the master planning process before they move on to try and obtain the EIR. The first page here itemizes tasks 1 through 11, which is that final master plan approval. If you go to the next slide, we'll see the rest of the tasks. So you see the bottom line, the total. It cost them, originally they thought it would take 2.9 million, but it actually cost them 1.68 million. And if we go to the last slide, we have what they're proposing to utilize the remaining 1.2 million. They have that cost breakdown of roughly 950 for estimated consultant costs, and then almost 300,000 for BOE costs, and the BOE costs 150, and then the 41,000 for contingency.
Isn't that a lot of money for an EIR?
No.
No?
So.
Okay. Just because I got one the other day for 15,000, so I was just, obviously not in the middle of a major city, but just my reference is a little off, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. So with this additional time and the ability to utilize the remaining funds, we can continue this community engagement through the CEQA process, and then continue their search for a responsible party and future funding to ensure that the master plan projects can be implemented in the future, and that will allow DWP to, pass over this beautiful site. So as I mentioned, the master plan is finalized. We scheduled to present it to the Board of Public Works and City Council. If this amendment is approved, BOE and Hargraves proceed with the efforts to obtain environmental clearance and ensure that the master plan projects can be constructed. We recommend that the Board of Water and Power Commissioners adopt the proposed amendments to the MOA. That concludes my presentation. And as I mentioned earlier, we also have Deborah Weintraub on the line. She's the project lead, and she can help in addressing some of the questions the board may have. And Deborah, I don't know if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello. Good afternoon, commissioners.
Good afternoon.
So if there's any other questions, we can answer that.
I don't have any specific. This is very helpful and informative. It would be helpful though to get some sort of briefing on the ultimate master plan. Whatever incremental piece you think is worth knowing.
I'd be happy to do that. I'll work with Christine to set that up.
I have a question. And this is partly my inexperience with CEQA. When you do go through the process and let's say you're going to implement in phases, which is what I had understood. How do you have to go back to the document to refresh and in order to move forward?
So that's a great question, Commissioner Lehrer. We intend to do a hybrid CEQA document, which will both have specificity about the impacts of all of the different phases, but will enable the phases to proceed separately. And what will happen is, if, let's say, a phase doesn't happen for 5 years, and there are changes to the environmental impact because some of the design elements change, there may have to be a supplement to the EIR. But we're hoping to comprehensively address the impacts of all of the phases through this EIR clearance. So some projects can proceed with no additional CEQA actions being taken.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any additional questions? Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, are you interested in making a motion?
Yes, I move to approve item number 20.
Terrific. I second. Susie, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Berard? Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Yes.
Commissioner Lehrer?
Yes.
Commissioner Reyes?
Yes.
Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL?
Yes.
4 yes.
Okay, terrific. Then the motion passes, and is just for record keeping purposes, is Commissioner Berard, has she left the meeting?
Commissioner Berard has stepped away from the meeting.
Okay, terrific. And I should have said this at the top of the meeting. I'll do it moving forward, just because it's hard for everyone to see everyone, and it is necessary for us to know who's in and out of the meeting. Should a commissioner have to leave for some reason, it would just be helpful if you all would just put it in the chat and let Susie know. That would be terrific. And then when you come back, do the same so that we can keep track of who's here and who isn't. With that, we'll move to item number 23.
Can I, I don't know what.
Commissioner Lehrer, your mic is off.
I don't know what the protocol is, but Silver Lake and the headworks are sort of connected in ways, in very important ways, which is the water some of the water functions from Silver Lake happen at headworks. And it's a big site. It's been in construction for a good 7 or 8 years. And it is not clear to some of us who drive there every day what it's going to look like in the future, but I understand there's some planning.
Well, actually, Commissioner, I spoke with Marty about this issue, and there'll be a board presentation on the project.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So, yeah, I think we'll be following up that way. I have a number of questions about kind of where we're going with that, and I thought that it would be useful for the board to have a more comprehensive understanding of that particular project. So that will be coming up before the end of March. We'll put that on calendar. Yeah. All right. So with respect to to item 23. And I just had a couple of questions. I know that there's no formal presentation about the resolution. The resolution indicates, I'm looking at the wrong piece of paper. The resolution indicates that, and for those of you who aren't looking at it, this is something else that was emailed out last night, that there would be appointments of additional individuals that would be able to act as the chief accounting employee in the event of the temporary absence or other inability to act of the individual that this board might appoint. I understand what temporary absence means, but I don't understand what inability to act means.
I believe that is if they're on vacation or they're out of the office. On a daily basis, we have accounts payable that's running checks and the chief accounting employee signs off. Every other week, we have payroll that has to be printed and the chief accounting employee signs off on the demand.
I do understand what the job is. I'm just trying to make sure that we are not, by this action, appointing 3 individuals as opposed to a single individual with an additional individual who is empowered to act in that person's absence.
No, it's really for operational purposes so that we can make sure that if accounts payable goes out every day, we have somebody on staff that can sign for the chief accounting employee. If the chief accounting employee is here, that person should be signing, and if they're not here, we don't wait till they get back in the office to release the check.
And just in terms of how this protocol is set up, I would be looking to make sure that the protocol is one that the chief accounting employee has signed off on, and that just so that we can understand what the protocols are in terms of who is empowered to actually take these actions. Okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, things are done electronically. And we've worked that out with the city controller's office. So because once we sign off on it, then it goes to the city controller's office for final release.
No, I understand. That part I do understand. I just mean our internal process. I'm not talking about from when it leaves the department to when it goes to the city, but really how it's operating internally within the department. I just want to make sure that there is, since we are appointing a person who has a particular responsibility, I just want to make sure that to the extent that that is being delegated, that it's being delegated under protocols that are clear and transparent to everyone.
I will work with the chief accounting employee to make sure that she understands the process and when we would, and get her approval on when she would say she would authorize somebody who's also delegated to sign on her behalf. Is that the protocol you're looking for, Commissioner?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then with that, I've got no other questions. Are there any additional questions about item 23?
No, thank you.
Then I'd like to move adoption of item 23. Is there a second?
Moved. Second.
Susie, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Lair? Commissioner Lair? President McCLAIN-HILL?
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady?
Aye.
Vice President Reyes?
Aye.
Jill Barard is away from the meeting. Mia Lair, please unmute yourself. Commissioner Lair? We have 3 ayes, President McCLAIN-HILL.
Thank you. That's certainly enough to pass the motion, so we can move forward. And item 24, I also called special. I know that this resolution was put forward by Commissioner NEEMAN Brady at the last board meeting. And in the context of moving it forward, she read the resolution, but there wasn't much comment, or there was no comment or discussion around the resolution. And I actually did have some comments regarding it. But before I move forward, are there any other commissioners that might have any comments or questions about item 24? And also, Dr. Tickle, you indicated that you too might have some comments on item 24 if asked.
Yes.
Or I'm sorry, did you have any preliminary comments in advance of the discussion?
Yes, we think this is an important item because there are purchase options in projects from very tiny ones to now $1.5 billion projects, and we think there should be further detail in the delegation of authority for very small projects, but for larger projects, we think the decision to exercise these options or not should be considered by the board. And one of the challenges is that many of these contracts have options at a number of years in the contract. Say, for example, at year 7, 12, 15, and final year of contract. So these things would be coming up, and it may be appropriate to do delegation of authority that's specific to the project on some of the larger ones.
Thank you for that observation. Commissioner NEEMAN Brady, did you want to speak to your motion before any additional comments or discussion, or?
I'm trying to weigh the comments that Dr. Pickle just contributed, and trying to determine if there was some action associated with that.
It sounds like, at least from my perspective, I certainly appreciate Dr. Pickle's perspective and comments, and believe that as we move forward, there might be some additional refinements. But I wanted to pull this item to both tell you how much I appreciate the work that you've done to bring this to the board level for consideration and approval, and that it really does underscore the business decisions that are made within this department on a fairly regular basis that are sort of under the radar, and the degree to which we've got to be far more assertive in identifying those decisions that ought to be subject to commission review and oversight. This is clearly, for all of the reasons that you know, and the reasons that Dr. Pickle pointed out, these are clearly areas, or this is clearly an area where oversight and review is critical. And so I wanted to underscore my both deep appreciation and strong support for this motion, and to simply urge that we not only pass the motion, but that we take all affirmative steps that might be necessary and warranted to really begin to categorize what's out there. Are there specific additional items that or additional points of review that we might want to consider? And again, to Dr. Pickle's point, if there are places where delegation of authority might make sense, then we can consider that on a go-forward basis. But we can't allow our partnering or our executing certain business through SCAPA to become a de facto delegation of the authority and the obligations of this board to participate in and to vote on decisions that are of significant economic or other consequence to the department. So.
Very well said, and I thank you for highlighting those issues, and that very much is the reason for putting this motion forth, and hopefully it takes us a step in that correct direction.
I also want to echo what has been said by President McCLAIN-HILL and Commissioner NICOLE NEEMAN Brady, and my take on this. Why I fully support it is because of the huge investment that we make, right, for reliability purposes and delivery for our programs and projects. And really the overall thing is the transparency and accountability that we have to model to the public. That these projects, the monitoring part of it, the decision-making part of it, ought to really be clear and understandable. And I just am really supportive, just reading the resolution. I'm just heartened by the fact that, yes, this is going to be a good thing to do, a huge step for the department to undertake this. So thank you.
And then Marty, I assume that your staff will be, working with council or with whomever you need to work with in order to make sure that this becomes the operating standard moving forward for these decisions, these options.
Yes, that's correct. And so we'll set up a process for how we go about this. And certainly, staff would continue to do the evaluation and present a recommendation to the board, the way they do currently. But again, to involve the board, the decision, especially the decisions of great magnitude and things that should be, seen by everyone. So we have a process internally. We'll make sure that's documented so you can understand what it is and what to expect. And then we would follow that in the course of making basically a board package presentation to the, with what staff sees as what we believe the prudent route to take, and then ask the board to either concur or give us different direction. So.
And then just moving forward, I'd very much appreciate that the OPA be involved in whatever development of the process that you might want to move forward. That there be time for their review as well. And then ultimately, and then as an additional matter, and this is not of high urgency, but because I know that we have many outstanding requests, but it would be useful for there to be developed a list of all of the projects to which this particular motion would be applicable at this time. And as of today, as this motion stands, it would be any project, not just projects of a certain level of significance. So with that, I'd like to move adoption of item 24.
I move adoption.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Sorry. With regard to Dr. Pickle's recommendation, when we bring a list back, would it be a good time then to decide whether there maybe should be some threshold or cutoff? Because I know you could always make another recommendation to change in the future. I didn't know if you wanted to.
Now, why don't we just look and see what we got, and then we'll figure out how we go about, thinking through delegation of authority, if any, moving forward.
Sorry to interrupt.
One brief comment on delegation of authority. This board has reviewed delegation of the authority in the past. The delegation of authority to the GM was extraordinarily tight. We looked at delegation of authority across other utilities, and there was no utility we were aware of that had a threshold below 25 million. And using those arguments, we were able to get Marty's delegation of authority, the GM's delegation of authority raised for something up to 6 million.
Yeah, I'm only talking about
up to 6,000, but
yeah, I'm only talking about as it relates to the PPAs, not overall funding authority.
Understood.
President McClain.
But this had been a discussion before. I think your answer is correct. We ought to see the list and work from there.
President McClain.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Reiko. I would like to point out that in your packet, under items, the power system items for the RPS, there is a list of contracts, and one of the columns shows the ownership option date as well as the contract end date, and those were added a few months back at the request of Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Then thank you. There's no additional work required. Good job, and Nicole, I should have known that you had been incredibly thorough. A motion's been made, and I think it was seconded. So if we could have a vote, please.
Yes, Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Yes.
Vice President Reyes.
Yes.
Commissioner LEHRER.
Yes.
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Yes.
4 ayes.
Then if I am correct, that concludes our open session agenda. It would be terrific if we could take maybe a 10-minute break before heading into closed session. Joe, would you please do the honors of making the transition into closed session?
I sure will. And before I do that, let me just say the only item we'll be doing is 25B. we are deferring 25A. So if you're not participating in 25B, there's no need for you to call in. At this time, we will recess into closed session, and in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, we will report any actionable items taken therein. Thank you. We are in recess.
Thank you.